Mohammed's secret testimony to Zahid for the will of God in the spiritual world. I, the author of this book, was a Muslim by birth. One of the main contents of this religion, namely the identity of God, is unmistakably clear. The Islamic concept of only believing in one God was a successful foundation for me, which enabled me to meet God very early. Therefore, I have great respect in my heart for the man who is called Mohammed. Even if I try so hard, I cannot put into words how much I adore Mohammed. After meeting God, I understood that I no longer belong to any religion. Everyone who meets God leaves his religion at that moment. Let's take Jesus as an example here. Since his birth, Jesus has belonged to the Jewish faith, which is based on the laws of Moses. When he was appointed as the Messiah by God, it was his task to establish the kingdom of God on earth and to follow God's instructions. When God appointed me as the Messiah in the 21st century, he told me that the end of all religions has come. The new world, the kingdom of God, will be the one world family centered on God. In my early childhood, Mohammed appeared to me many times. He never mentioned his name to me. So, I wasn't aware that Mohammed, the founder of Islam, came to me. I remember Mohammed's kindness, his parental heart, and his guidance during my childhood. The more I developed spiritually, the more intensely and often the founder of Islam appeared to me together with his early followers. They all laid a foundation in my early life and appeared for the divine providence. Note, if I look back at this time, I realize that their love was for one purpose only. I should stay in Islam, not tell to be a prophet, and not reform their religion. The Sufis. I, the author, grew up in the direction of Sufism, according to whose main teaching humans should first establish their vertical and mystical relationship with their Creator. Sufism developed from Islam and was inspired by God and the heavens. In it, the identity of God is clear and unambiguous. There were many Sufis who could establish their own relationship with God. The Sufis felt that there was a gap between God and man. To reduce this distance to God and to really overcome it is the real meaning of Sufism. Mankind will ask, why has it become so quiet around Sufism after a long time? The answer is as follows. Although Sufism has given a new expression to God's law for a certain time, it never got beyond the borders of Islam. As a result, Sufism has returned to the Islamic tradition. The Sufis now live exactly as prescribed by the Islamic religion. In his mission, Mohammed later began to spread violently his religion against the will of God. Whenever he waged a holy war, he was sitting on a horse. He held a sword in one hand and the Quran in the other. During his lifetime, he anchored his own thoughts in the name of God in the Quran, including the statement that Islam will rule the whole world. That's why Umar, his second successor, had doubts about Muhammad's death when he died. Umar announced that Mohammed, like Moses, had gone to Mount Sinai for 40 days. Afterwards, he would come back and fight against all religions. God will help him to defeat all religions in his lifetime. Only then will he die. Umar even went so far as to pull out his sword and threaten anyone who claimed that Mohammed was dead to kill him. This threat only came to an end when Abu Bakr, who was absent at Muhammad's death, arrived and walked past Umar into Muhammad's tent. When Abu Bakr, who became Muhammad's first successor, came out again, he announced, "Whoever has worshipped Muhammad should be sad that Muhammad died, and whoever has worshipped Allah should be sad that He is omnipresent and never dies." Actually, many prophets appeared in Sufism, but most of them did not speak about it publicly because Muhammad had announced that no prophet would come after him. This was not the will of God and the heavens, but Muhammad's own idea, which he manifested in the name of God. If one wonders why Muhammad announced this, the reason is already obvious. He wanted to prevent future prophets from reforming his religion when they would find out that many statements in the Quran are not from God and the heavens. As a result, many Sufis who claimed to be prophets were killed, others remained silent and lived lonely because of fear of being killed. During his mission life, Muhammad gave the order to take care of the new prophets. Abu Bakr, Muhammad's first successor, let many of those who claimed to be prophets be killed during his time as caliph. As already mentioned, after meeting God, nobody can belong to any religion. No matter whether it is Christianity, Islam, or any other religion. This person belongs only to God and is therefore His divine child. God himself is not a Jew, Christian, Muslim, nor does he belong to any other religion. It is good for people to begin their spiritual development in or with a religion, but it is not good enough to stay there until the end of their life. Humanity must discover its unique relationship with God. All religions were created in an unnatural way. They resulted from an emergency situation because human beings fell into the hands of Lucifer. Since then, the angelic worlds have been leading, judging, and controlling humanity in the spiritual world. Originally, human beings were supposed to lead and guide the creation of angels, but now they are just the objects of these angel worlds. All religions were inspired by different angel dimensions. They should create a foundation on earth that enables mankind to follow the path of principles in order to learn about ethical, moral, and above all, spiritual values. Beginning from these people and the other beings in the universe, all human beings will have to move forward to build a vertical relationship with their Creator. Through Sufism, God wanted to introduce and present himself in a new way. But Sufism only showed this new spiritual way within the frame of Islam. God was again isolated and withdrew. Once again, the dimensions of the angels and jinns had to take the guidance. This is a bitter truth for the religious world, especially for Islam. Now, a new era has dawned in which God has sent me to fulfill His will and where He will settle down with His children. This is not the age of the religions. In this new era, religions must unite with one another, centered on God. God will never unite with them for the sake of religion. Once, God asked the Sufis in paradise about their greatest wish that He could fulfill them. They told Him that they wished that He would choose someone from their lineage who would fulfill God's will and bring salvation to mankind. God said to me, the author of this book, "You are the wish that I fulfilled for the Sufis." But I said to God, "I would rather be your wish." When God heard this, He smiled. Since I received a mission from our Creator, my ultimate deepest wish is that one day all of God's lost children will be able to meet and see their Heavenly Father directly. When Jesus was unable to fulfill God's will to establish the kingdom of God on earth, Lucifer and his fallen angels took a high indemnity price from the heavenly side. For about 600 years, the heavenly side could not choose a man of God who would be able to carry out as the central person the divine providence. We must not forget one thing. If Jesus had fulfilled God's will, neither Christianity nor 575 years later through Mohammed, Islam would have been founded. In the spiritual world, Christianity belongs to Paul. Jesus should have realized the ideal world of God by sharing his spiritual experiences and observations with the Israelite people. Instead, he started his mission on the wrong foot by performing miracles and healing people. He hoped they would believe in him as the Messiah. However, his mission took a wrong turn because people only came to be healed and then went back to their old world. The new world of God will only arise if the Messiah reveals more about God and educates people spiritually by explaining God's will. After about 600 years, Mohammed was called through the heavens to fulfill God's will. Archangel Gabriel worked with Mohammed to advance God's providence. Note: angels can only create a new religion, but never the ideal world, the kingdom of God. It is the sole responsibility of mankind to grow spiritually through the will of God, and thus to build a new world centered on the love of God. My special experience with Mohammed. I have certain messages from Mohammed for all Muslims, but I decided to mention these messages at the end of his life story. Before I start with Mohammed's life story, I would like to begin with a special experience that I had with Mohammed in the spiritual world. Mohammed invited me to a celebration in the spiritual world. During this, he said to me, "The time has come when the heavens want to come down to earth. If you will become the object of God, the heavens will also settle down on earth." Mohammed took his cape from his shoulders and put it around my shoulders. Then he said to all the messengers present in paradise, "Behold, God has chosen Zahid." Mohammed's testimony. Now I start with the life story of the great prophet who introduced the identity of God to humanity. When I met Mohammed in paradise or in different parts of the angel world, I often observed that he prefers to be alone and to stay in isolated places in the spiritual world. When I flew to him because of his life story, I met him on the highest green mountain in a dimension of the formation stage of paradise. He sat all alone on the mountain edge and let his feet dangle down. I already recognized him from above. There was no other being around him for thousands of miles. I flew down, landed very close to him, and walked to him. When I greeted Mohammed, he got up and embraced me. He asked me, "How could you find me here?" I told him that the heavens had helped me. He smiled and said, "For me, there's no better place than this to be alone. I could stay here forever." I told him, both on earth and in the spiritual world, most people or spirit beings have the desire to see and meet you one time. But you chose such an isolated place. He looked at me and kept quiet. Watching him, I could see great sorrows in his face. For some moments, he turned his face to the mountain. He was completely inwardly and did not speak a word. After a while he broke the silence and started to speak. I have been waiting too long for a man of God on whom I can rely that he will liberate the heart of God. I still remember very well the time when you were born. I was very close to your mother when she gave birth to you. I prayed for you in many lonely places, year after year. When I heard this, I became sad and tears were in my eyes. Mohammed put his hands on my shoulders and continued, I didn't say this to make you sad. Actually, it is my greatest wish to see you happy. You have received a very amazing grace from God. Most of all, God is happy with you and He loves you. Suddenly, we saw a few angels flying near our mountain. I told Mohammed, on my way here I saw no one around this mountain. I thought this part of paradise is empty. But now angels fly past us suddenly. Mohammed replied, From time to time I see different angels and souls flying over this mountain. However, this happens very seldom. Then Mohammed said, All glory belongs to God alone. He not only forgave me the mistakes which I made during my mission life, but also that I brought my own thoughts into the Quran. I am speechless and cannot express His love, kindness and compassion for me and mankind. It is very important to talk about my mission life. There are many unknown events in my life which have to do with my mission on earth. Several of these facts concern God, the angel worlds, and especially Archangel Gabriel. In the spiritual world, I found out that no other religion would have been necessary if Jesus had succeeded in realizing the world of God on earth. I would have come on a new level to express God's love. The earth would then be filled with prophets. I want to let you know that God and the heavens wanted to give me the mission of the Messiah first. But at that time, neither the Arab world nor I were ready for the messianic mission. Secondly, I made various mistakes so that God and the heavens had to wait. Later, with the guidance of God and heavens, Gabriel took over their position and gave me in parallel the mission of Moses. I will tell you the details about it in my testimony about my mission life. Mohammed began. I, Mohammed, start my life with the name of God, who is very merciful and kind and who keeps forgiving His creation. I was born in Mecca. While my mother Amina was pregnant, my father Abdullah died in Medina when he came back from one of his business trips to Syria. The name Mohammed was revealed to my mother in a dream during her pregnancy. During this time she saw different dreams of the angel world about me. After my birth, my grandfather Abdul Muttalib carried me to the house which Abraham had built for God. There he prayed for me. He asked God to protect me and take care of me. The year of my birth was very hard for the people of Mecca and the surrounding areas. Everyone was desperately waiting for rain. Many animals died. Not only the children, but all people suffered from the ongoing drought. The climate of the large cities was very unhealthy for newborns. At that time, it was common that caravans with men and their wives from the rural regions came to the cities. They took care of the babies of financially better off parents for a certain amount so that their children could grow up in the countryside. My grandfather and my mother also wanted me to live in the countryside for at least 2 years for health reasons. But no woman from the caravan wanted to have me because my father had already died. Nobody believed that my mother could pay the amount of money requested. On the last evening of their stay, a woman named Halima from the caravan said to her husband, "Tomorrow our caravan will go back home. I haven't found a child yet." She felt ashamed returning without a child from Mecca. Her husband replied, "There is still a boy, but none of you wanted him because his father already died." All women are afraid that his mother or relatives may not pay enough. I advise you to go back and take this child. Maybe God will give us his blessings through this child. So Halima came to my mother and took me with her. In addition to a daughter who looked after me as a babysitter, Halima also had a boy in my age. Because of the grace of God, I grew up so quickly that at the age of 2, people called me a little adult boy. At 2 years and 5 months, Halima brought me to my mother. She said to her, "I'm afraid that this child will get sick in Mecca, so please leave Mohammed in my care for another 1.5 years. However, the reason why she wanted to keep me longer was another. She observed that as long as I was with them, they were surrounded by luck. She believed that they received all the blessings only because of me. Therefore, my mother allowed them to have me a little longer." Halima returned with me to her village. After a few months, the following happened. I was playing with Halima's son in the garden near the house where some sheep were grazing. Suddenly, 2 angels appeared. They had a golden plate full of ice cubes with them. I wanted to run away, but they caught me. They opened my chest and cleaned my heart, which had a black dot on it, with the ice cubes. Then one angel said to the other, "We gave him a new heart. Now this boy belongs to heavens. He will win over his people." When they left, I was very scared. I was unable to speak for a while. Halima and her husband ran into the garden. Her son had already told them what had happened to me. They both took me in their arms and I started to cry. They brought me inside, and when I got better, I told them what had happened. My foster parents were afraid and said to each other, "It is better when we bring this boy back to his family. This child is surely dominated by bad spirits." But the real reason was that they feared that something also could happen to their children. It also worried them that I was talking in my sleep. They wanted to bring me back to my family as soon as possible. When we arrived in Mecca, they lost sight of me. They searched for me but could not find me. When I reached the upper part of Mecca, I heard someone calling my name, Mohammed. I turned around but couldn't see anyone. After a while, I heard that voice again. When I turned around this time, I saw a white angel. He indicated with his hands that I should come to him. I first looked around for my foster parents. They were in front of me, but they were very busy with something else, so I could go unnoticed. I followed the white angel with fear and excitement in my heart. Finally, this angel entered a cave in the mountains. There he asked me, "Are you afraid?" I replied, "Yes." Then the angel said, "Do not be afraid, Mohammed. I am your friend." I asked him, "Are you really my friend?" And he replied, "Yes, I can help you. Whenever you are afraid, I come to you. If I ask you something now, will you do it?" I replied, "Yes, I will." Thereupon the angel said to me, "Never bow to the statues." I nodded my head affirmatively. Then the angel took me back to one of the streets of Mecca and disappeared before my eyes. Later, two acquaintances of my grandfather Abdul Muttalib found me and brought me to him. My grandfather was praying for me near the Kaaba. When he saw me, he was overjoyed and tears flowed from his eyes. He put me on his shoulders and kept walking around the house of God, which were built by Abraham, because I insisted on it. I didn't give him a break even when he got tired. Exhausted and with pain in his shoulders, he said to me, "Mohammed, you have to get off my shoulders now. Today I circled the house of God so often that I broke all my records. Now I cannot anymore. I am an old man." I said to my grandfather, "Then let me go by myself around this house." He agreed. My uncles were watching me very closely. After I had gone a few rounds alone, they said to my grandfather, "He will keep circling around the house. He doesn't want to stop at all." Therefore my grandfather stopped me and said, "Mohammed, it is enough for today. Your mother is waiting for you. We will come back to the house of God another day, then you can make as many rounds as you like." I told him that he had to promise to bring me back here as soon as possible. My grandfather promised it, and I asked him to let me go around God's house one last time. My grandfather replied that it would really be the very last time. After finishing my round, he prayed with me before taking me to my mother. It took me a while to get used of living with my mother. I cried many times and wanted to go back to my foster parents. For me, they were actually my real parents. I also missed my brother and sister. Although my mother kept reminding me that she was my real mother, I didn't want to believe her. One day I said to her, "If you are my real mother, where's my father?" She told me that my father died before I was born. I said to her, "It is not true. My mother and father are still alive." Whenever my mother couldn't handle me, she brought me to my grandfather. I had less trouble with him. He always agreed with me. One day I told my grandfather that I wanted to go back to my parents. My grandfather told me that he would bring me back, but first I should spend some time with him. He also said to my mother, "Don't say anything that could break Mohammed's heart. He is a very sensitive child. If his father Abdullah were still alive, he would be very happy to see Mohammed." One day I complained to my grandfather, "My new mother said that my father is dead." First my grandfather Abdul Muttalib wanted to answer my question, but then he said, "Yes, it's true. You have two mothers and two fathers. One father you know, the other you never saw. But if you want, I can take you to see your father." I replied, "But he is dead." My grandfather told me that we could still visit him. I reminded my grandfather of his promise to take me back to my foster parents. He said, "Well, we are going to make a deal now. You can visit your parents. I will send your uncle with you, but you come back and visit me. Then you can visit your foster parents again and come back to me. You can do this for as long as you want." I was very happy with this deal. My grandfather turned his face to his son Abu Talib and said to him, "I want you to go with Mohammed to visit his foster parents. Let him stay there for a month and you will come back. Take some money and some presents for them. A few days later, my uncle Abu Talib asked me if I was ready to visit my foster parents. I was overjoyed. He brought me to my foster parents and offered them my grandfather's money. He told them that he would take me back to Mecca a month later. I also brought some gifts for my brother and sister. Because of the money and the gifts, my foster parents were very happy to have me with them for a short time. The time passed very quickly. This time, however, I longed to see my grandfather again. That's why, when my uncle Abu Talib came to pick me up, I was not sad to say goodbye to my foster parents, brother and sister. I told them I will be back soon. My grandfather told me that I can visit you at any time. Next time I will bring you more presents. But now I have to go with my uncle Abu Talib because I promised to visit my grandfather. During my vacation with my foster parents, they told me that they were not my biological parents, but that they only took care of me. My real parents would live in Mecca. After I had told them that I didn't believe this in my heart, they no longer tried to convince me of it. I spent a lot of time traveling with my uncle Abu Talib, who was very close to me. Gradually, I became very close to him. He explained many things to me. I could ask him again and again without annoying him. My uncle Abu Talib loved me very much. On our trip back to Mecca, he told me that my father was his real brother. I had to believe him because my uncle was now my best friend. I said to my uncle, "My new mother told me that my father was dead. But my grandfather told me that we could visit him. Why cannot he visit us?" My uncle laughed and laughed. Then he said, "Unfortunately, we have to visit him." Later, he told our conversation to my grandfather. This time, when I saw my grandfather, I ran to him. He was sitting near the house of God, surrounded by other people. He took me in his arms and kissed me everywhere. He asked me if I had brought a gift for him. I said, "Yes. You just have to put me on your shoulders and carry me around this house until you can no longer. I will pray for you on your shoulders, and this will be my gift for you." My grandfather laughed and laughed. Then he said, "This is a very valuable gift." He asked me if I wanted to make my circles around God's house on the shoulders of my other uncles. There were many of them. They were all sitting together with my grandfather. I wished that each of them should take me 3 rounds around God's house. 2 or 3 uncles were happy to do this. The others did it out of a sense of duty since my grandfather asked them for it. Later, my grandfather asked me, "Today you rode on the shoulders of all your uncles. Are you happy now?" I told him that I wanted to ride on his shoulders too. He smiled and took me 3 rounds. My grandfather had a very special seat in the shadow of God's house. Only he was allowed to sit there. If other people came to see him, they had to sit down on the floor. He only allowed me to sit down on this place. My uncle and the others disliked this because they had respect for the person on the seat. Sometimes they were even angry with me. However, my grandfather told them that no one should stop me from sitting on his place. Most of the time my grandfather let me sit next to him. I was even allowed to interrupt him when he was talking to others. That didn't bother him. My behavior and activities delighted my grandfather. My uncles and aunts, on the other hand, feared that my grandfather would spoil me. One day I saw my mother crying. I was over 4 years old. When I asked her for the reason, she told me that she would miss my father very much. Then she said, "I missed you very much too. I gave you away so that you could grow up in a healthier environment." I asked her why she never visited me. Then she became sadder and tears flowed down her face. She couldn't answer me. Mohammed looked at me, Zahid, and said, "You know why she didn't visit me during this time. If you keep the secret for yourself, I would be very thankful to you." After that, Mohammed continued with his story. One day, my mother asked me if I wanted to visit my father. I replied, "Yes, I want to visit my father." She was very happy. She took me in her arms and kissed me on my face and said, "You can have many mothers and fathers, but the truth is that I'm your real birth mother. You're my own biological son forever." I wanted to say something, but she put her hands on my mouth and said, No, you don't have to say anything now." After that, my relationship with my mother became deeper and closer. Whenever my grandfather, uncles, and aunts worshipped the statues and idols, I never bowed to them. My grandfather asked me why. I told him that I had promised an angel not to kneel in front of these statues. My grandfather smiled and ordered everyone around him not to force me to bow down to these different idols. He told them that I was a little boy and when I would grow up I would understand it. One day my mother asked me, "Is it true, Mohammed, that an angel came to you and asked you not to kneel in front of these idols?" I said to her, "Yes, I always see this angel in front of me when I go with the others and I worship the idols. This angel gives me signs to understand that I should not bow under any circumstances." My mother was very surprised and said to me, "Today I would also like to share with you some of my dreams which I saw when I was pregnant with you." I asked my mother, "Tell me them straight ahead." She started. At the beginning of my pregnancy, I saw a light coming out of my stomach. I was lifted up to heavens. This light was divided into 3 colors and lighted up the entire world. In the 4th month of my pregnancy, the angels brought me to a wonderful world. They gave me a shower there. In the 6th month, I saw the angels in the house which was built by Abraham. They spoke in very loud voices, "God will destroy all these false gods. Only He will remain as the true creator of all." Then the angels looked at me and said, "The name of this boy will be Mohammed." When I was 8 months pregnant, I saw a tall, slim man with a beard. He came towards me with a bright white light. He put his hands on my belly and prayed to Allah, "Give this child your blessing. Let your name, Allah, be on everyone's lips through this child. Let him announce that you are the only God in this universe." Then this man turned to me and asked me, "Wouldn't you like to know who I am?" I told him that his respectful and strong personality didn't allow me to ask him about it. He said to me, "I am your father Abraham, and you are all my children." Afterwards, I woke up. My mother's dreams moved me very much. I asked her, "Is this an angel that appears to me?" She said yes and told me that I would be a very special child of God. One day my mother said to me that she couldn't tell me all the reasons why she didn't keep me with her, but she wanted to tell me two of them. She said, "When you were born there was a great suffering and a virus had spread in Mecca. I was afraid you might get sick. Your grandfather also wanted you to stay outside of this area for a while. That's why I decided to give you to foster parents. You could grow up there in a healthy environment, but I missed you every day. Later, I became sick myself and suffered from this disease for almost 2 years. Therefore, I asked your foster parents to visit me from time to time. But I definitely didn't want you to stay with me and get this disease from me. After my recovery, I had a very strong desire that you live with me as soon as possible. I sent a message to your foster mother to bring you back to me. When she came with you, it seemed to me that she was a very greedy woman. She really wanted to have you a little longer. I actually did not agree with it. She said that they would receive more blessings through you. In their village, even other people wanted to take care of you for a few days, so the blessing would also be given to them. She promised to bring you to me many times. A few months later, during one of her visits, she wanted to give you to me for good. I was very surprised and asked why she didn't want to keep you any longer. At first, she didn't want to reveal the reason, but I kept asking. Finally, she told me the whole story, what had happened to you. I asked her if she was afraid that bad spirits would dominate you. She confessed to me that this was precisely the reason. I also told them different dreams which I had about you during my pregnancy. I told them that it was not true what they thought about you because you were a very special child. I didn't want her to take you again. I was very happy to hear all of this from my mother, but especially that she believed that the angels had appeared to me. When I was 6 years old, my mother asked me if I wanted to visit my father's grave. I was very excited to hear this. Another woman accompanied us on our trip to my father's grave. First, my mother visited her family who lived between Mecca and Medina. In my mother's family, everyone was happy to see me and I received many gifts from them. Then we went to my father's grave in Medina. My mother sat down beside the grave and tears ran down her face. When I saw this, I started to cry as well. When my mother looked at me, she stopped crying and took me in her arms. Then she said, "Before your father left for his last business trip, he said to me, 'Although I will be very far away, my heart will always be with this child.' Your father firmly believed that I would give birth to a son. He told me that he would kiss you everywhere when he came back." My mother asked me, "Mohammed, if you have a wish for your father, you can now say it." I touched my father's grave and said, "Father, I also want to see you." I kissed this grave many, many times. My mother and the woman next to us smiled. My mother said to me, "Mohammed, that was wonderful. It was the best thing you could do for your father. Now I know that your father will be very, very happy." My mother wanted to stay in Medina for a little longer. There she became very sick again. That's why she returned to her family in the small town of Al-Abwa, which lies between Mecca and Medina. Her health deteriorated visibly. 3 days before her death, I was sitting alone in front of the house. I saw the same angel again. I went to him and asked, "Can't you help my mother? She is very sick. I don't want her to die." I started to cry. This angel took hold of both of my shoulders and said, "Mohammed, nobody dies. They all go to another place where they live on. If your mother no longer lives on this earth, I can take you to her. You can visit her no matter where she will live." I asked this angel, "Can you really do that?" He said yes and told me that he could do many other favors for me too. Then he disappeared again. I ran back to my mother and said to her, "You don't have to worry. This angel just met me and said that nobody really dies. Everyone would go to a new place." My mother held me in her arms and said, "Mohammed, did you really meet the same angel again?" I said yes. Tears fell from her eyes again. I asked her why she would cry now. She replied, "These are tears of happiness. Your angel told you the truth. Even if I will no longer be in this world, this angel will take care of you. This angel was sent to you by Allah." My mother died 3 days later. I was very sad. I wanted to take my mother back to Mecca, but they buried her in the small place where her family lived. Now, my mother's family had a strange feeling about me. They thought a strong, evil spirit had taken possession of me. The woman who had traveled with us brought me back to Mecca. Tears fell from my face all the way home because I had to return to Mecca without my mother. When I saw my grandfather, I went to him and cried in his arms. He was crying with me. Looking straight into my eyes, he said, "Mohammed, stay with your grandfather. My eyes always want to see you around me." I replied, "I also want to stay with you all the time." A few days later, my grandfather was sitting in the shadow of God's house with a few others. I sat next to him and fell asleep. The same angel appeared to me in my sleep and took me to a beautiful world. There I met my mother and father. I was very happy to see them and spent a lot of time with them. My parents said, "Mohammed, we live very happily here." The angel appeared and said, "You see, Mohammed, nobody dies. I told you that they all live in a new world." I took the angel's hand and he had to promise to bring me back here. He promised it to me and then I woke up. My grandfather was still talking to the people who had gathered around him. He looked at me, smiled and said, "Dear son, you look like you are very happy." I told him, "Yes, the same angel came to me and took me to a new world. I met my parents and spent a lot of time there with them. This angel promised he would again take me to visit my parents." My grandfather, my uncles and the other people looked at me with astonishment. My grandfather said to me, "What wonderful news is this that my son can visit his parents. My son, describe your father's face. How does he look like, because you never met him here on earth?" I began to describe my father's face. My grandfather, my uncles and the other people were even more surprised. They looked at each other. My grandfather took me in his arms and said, "Mohammed, you really met your father. You had a wonderful dream." Later, when I was alone with my grandfather, he asked me, "Mohammed, do you see the angels?" I told him that I had seen this one angel a few times and that this same angel had told me not to bow before the statues. My grandfather gave me many kisses on my mouth and told me that I was his very special son on earth. I was very happy that he believed me. I mostly slept with my grandfather. When I lay next to him that evening, he was silent. I asked him, "Why don't you want to talk to me? You didn't massage my back today either." He replied, "I forgot that you were lying next to me." He massaged my back and said, "Mohammed, tell me again the story which happened to you when you lived with your foster mother Halima. What happened in the backyard of the house at the time?" I told him that I was playing with my brother and at the same time herding the sheep. I said, "Suddenly 2 angels came who had a lot of light. They put me on the ground, opened my chest and took my heart out. They washed my heart with ice cubes and removed a black dot from it. Then they said to each other that I belong to them now." After hearing the story, my grandfather said, "Surely Allah will take care of you and He will guide you through His angels." Every night my grandfather told me different wonderful fairy tales. My grandfather took care of me very much. He took me with him almost everywhere. He prayed with me regularly. 2 years later, my grandfather became sick and asked my uncle Abu Talib to take care of me as if I were his own child. Before my grandfather died, he took the promise from my uncle Abu Talib that he would never let me miss my parents and grandfather. Abu Talib promised to take care of me like his own child. He also promised that he would do his best to protect and guide me while he was alive. Then he said to me, "My son, as your angel said, nobody dies. That's why I am going to live in a different place now. Do me a favor. Please ask your angel if he also can bring you to me so that you can visit me there too." Tears fell from my eyes. I embraced my grandfather. Since I came back from my foster parents, he was very close to me. I whispered in my grandfather's ear, "I will miss you very, very much." My grandfather started crying. My aunt said to my grandfather, "Do not show so much weakness in front of the child, otherwise he become even sadder." A few days later, my grandfather died. Before he died, he whispered in my ear, "Don't forget to tell your angel that you have to visit me too." Tears ran down my cheeks. I promised my grandfather to visit him with my angel. I missed my grandfather very much, but my angel gave me the opportunity to meet my grandfather in dreams a few times. At this point, Mohammed told me, the author, "I have a special meeting with God now. I have to go. The next time we see each other, it will be here again." Mohammed embraced me and said, "I will see you again soon." When he flew vertically into the sky, I watched him for a while. I admired the fantasy world of the paradise around me, and tears flowed down from my eyes. On one hand, it made me very sad that very rarely human souls could get here. All of these places belong to God's children. On the other hand, I was also very happy in my heart to be able to listen to Mohammed's life story. Here in this beautiful place in paradise, I prayed to God with tears, "Dear Heavenly Father, I want that through my mission human beings can find the easiest way to get to your home in the near future." Then I flew back to Earth, which was covered with darkness. Lucifer has multiplied evil and also his bad activities on Earth. I could notice Lucifer's vibration everywhere. So many people live on Earth, but I could hardly see someone with light in his soul. People are not aware that light means life in the spiritual world. No light means having to live in very dark worlds. I visited Mohammed again on the same mountain in paradise. He was already waiting for me and looked very happy. His light was shining. I said, "You look very happy." He replied, "Yes, you are right." And do you know why? The last time I met God, I asked him, "Can I tell Zahid everything which concerns my mission and Gabriel?" God answered, "Yes, tell him every detail of your mission and your life. You are free to speak about Gabriel." That's the best thing. That's why I'm very happy and liberated. Now I want to tell you everything. It is up to you what you write down in your book. You can reveal some things later when you have a better foundation. Mohammed continued with his testimony. Now I was living with my uncle Abu Talib. When my grandfather died, I was a little over 8 years old. My uncle was more concerned with me than with his own family. I became the shepherd of his sheep because my uncle asked me if I would like to take care of his animals. Abu Talib was not only my uncle, he was also my friend whom I always could ask for advice. I often saw an overwhelming love for me in his eyes. 2 of my 9 uncles came very close to me. They took great care of me, which increased their love for me. As you know, their names were Hamza and Abbas. They even followed me in my mission. I will tell you a little bit more about them later. Abu Talib was closest to me. Most of the time he wanted me to come with him. Even at night I slept in my uncle's bed. When I saw something, I told my uncle Abu Talib about it. One day, all of my uncles went for prayer to worship the different statues. As they prayed and bowed to their idols, my uncle Abu Lahab said to me very harshly, "Why don't you bow and pray to the idols like we do?" I told him that my angel had forbidden me to do so. Abu Lahab got very angry and said, "Had we not sworn it to our father Abdul Muttalib, I would force you to bow before these gods as we do." When my uncle Abu Talib heard this, he interrupted Abu Lahab and said to him, "Don't speak to Mohammed like that." One day my uncle Hamza visited us. He wanted to take me to him. I was very silent on our way. My uncle asked me why I did not talk. I told him that I had a bad dream last night. My uncle said, "Mohammed, tell me what you saw." I said, "You will not like it at all." My uncle laughed at me and said, "Mohammed, I also didn't like some of your other dreams. Did your angel appear to you in this dream again?" I affirmed it. He laughed again and said, "Who else could appear in your dream? I still want to know everything because your angel gives you very correct information." Therefore I said, "I saw that I was with this angel in the Kaaba, the house of God. I had a long, strong iron rod in my hands." The angel pointed to the idols. When I touched the statues with my stick, they fell to the floor. I went out of God's house and did the same outside. Whenever I touched a statue with my iron rod, it fell to the floor. Not one was left. This angel flew up to heavens and announced loudly, "The false gods were destroyed in the house of Allah." Then I woke up. When my uncle heard this dream, he said to me, "What kind of dream is this? It is really not a good thing. It seems to me that this angel is not an angel after all. He may as well be a bad spirit." I replied, "This angel is not a bad spirit. He has a lot of light." That evening Hamza told Abu Talib and Abu Lahab my dream. Abu Lahab said, "Surely this child is a victim of a bad spirit." Abu Talib replied, "It cannot be, because I'm watching this boy closely. I know that all of his dreams came true before." When I went to bed with my uncle Abu Talib, he asked me, "Did you really see this dream and destroy all the idols we worship with the iron rod?" I replied, "Yes, it was exactly as Hamza told it." Then he asked if I by no doubt heard the angel calling when he flew up, "False God profaned the house of Allah." I pleaded, "Yes, I heard this angel. I would never lie to you." Afterwards I started to cry. Abu Talib took me in his arms and said, "You don't need to be afraid. I am on your side, but don't tell the others your dreams." I promised it to him. Then he said, "You can tell me all your dreams whenever this angel appears to you." I was about 15 years old. My uncles Abu Talib, Hamza, and Abbas were still very close to me. I was able to tell my uncle Abbas everything. He kept my secrets for himself. Abbas was a very wise man and always gave me the best advice no matter what situation I was in. One day I told my uncle Abbas that we all will participate in a war in which many people on both sides will die. Abbas asked, "Did you see this in a dream?" I said, "Yes, however the angel showed me that this war will take place near the house of God." Abbas asked me if he could tell this dream to Abu Talib. I replied, "No, I will tell him." That evening I told my uncle Abu Talib about this dream. He just looked at me and said nothing. After a while he asked, "Mohammed, did you tell this dream to anyone else?" I told him that Abbas already knew it. Abu Talib asked me not to tell this dream to anyone else. I promised it to him. This war took place 3 months later. All of my uncles participated in it and I helped them. I collected the arrows and gave them to my uncles. Later, Abu Talib and Abbas were so inspired that they told everyone in the family that my dreams were true. My uncle Abu Talib said to me, "I am very proud of you." Hamza said to me, "Mohammed, you are surprising me. Your angel is a good angel of Allah. He is giving you the right news." My uncle Abbas had a small business. When I visited him, he said to me, "Mohammed, from now on, I will listen to you very carefully. Surely Allah has great plans for you." My other uncles were less inspired. For them, I was the victim of my dreams. At the age of 20, I started selling various goods to people. It was a very small business. In your modern times, you would say that I was a good young salesman. People trusted me. Particularly old people I could handle well. When they came to me and told their problems, I listened to them very carefully. Every time they told me the same story, and every time I listened to them with the same attention until they grew tired of repeating it themselves. Many old people came to me with their problems, hoping I could give them good advice. Because of this, my trade with them flourished. Many times other merchants sold their goods to me profitably. I was later able to sell the same products to their parents and relatives at an even higher price. When they found it out, they were very surprised. But I kept saying, "I do fair business. I can trade with whom I want." Abu Talib and Hamza were very happy with my business activities. My uncle Abbas often asked me for advice how to sell his products better. Sometimes my angel appeared in my dreams and showed me how to do good business. I have accompanied my uncle Abu Talib on his business trips since I was 12. I watched him and the others at their shops and saw how and why they were successful. This gave me the opportunity to make my own experiences from an early age. On the other hand, the people of my tribe, the Quraysh, had always been traders. In your time, you would call them business people. That's why it wasn't particularly difficult for me to understand business practices. The Quraysh were far superior to the other Arab tribes in trade matters due to their cleverness and tricky experiences. I did not like this procedure. Gradually, people started to trust me because I never broke my promises. I hated to lie even in business matters. With time, other business people brought me their products and gave me the order to sell these goods for them.